Mantra 6. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmani evanupasyati sarvabhuteshu chatamanamam tato na vijugupsate. Translation: a person who sees everything in relation to the Supreme Lord and see all entities as his part and parcel, and who sees the Supreme Lord within everything, never hears anything nor any being. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Here is an explanation of the Mahabhagavad, the great personality who sees everything in relation to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are three stages of realizing the presence of Supreme Lord. The Kanishta Adhikari, the person who is in the lowest stage of realization of the Lord, goes to one place of worship such as temple, church, or mosque in terms of his particular type of religious faith and worship there in terms of the scriptural injunctions. Such devotees think that the Lord is there at the place of worship and nowhere else. Such devotees cannot recognize who is in what position in the devotional line or in terms of realization of the Supreme Lord. They follow the routine formulas and sometimes quarrel among themselves, estimating one particular type of worship better than another. These Kanishta Adhikaris in the lowest stage of devotion are called materialistic devotees, or those just trying to transcend the material boundary to reach the spiritual plane. Next above these Kanishtadhikaris are the Madhyamadhikaris, the devotees who are in the intermediate stage of devotional service. These Madhyamadhikaris observe four principles in relation to the Supreme Lord, which are as follows. They see, first of all, the Supreme Lord. They see next the devotees of the Lord. They see also the innocent who have no knowledge about the God, and at last they see the atheist who have no faith in the Lord and who hate those in the devotional line. The Madhyamadhikari devotee behave differently towards the different above mentioned four principles. He adores the Lord, considering him the object of love, and he makes friendship with those who are in the devotional line. He tries to awaken the dormant love of Godhead in the hearts of the innocent people, but he does not approach the atheist who deride at the very name of the Lord. Above the Madhyamadhikari, there is the Uttamadhikari devotee who sees everything in relation to the Supreme Lord. He does not make any particular discrimination between the atheist and the theist, but sees in every one of them the part and parcel of God. He knows that there is no difference between a vastly learned Brahman and a dog in the street, because both of them are of the Lord, though in different embodiments due to the different qualities of material actions. The Brahman particle of the Supreme Lord has not misused the little independence given by the Lord, but the dog particle has misused his independence, and thus he has been punished by the law of nature, being encased in the ignorant form of dog. Without considering the respective action of the Brahman and the dog, the Uttamadhikari tries to do good to both. Such a learned devotee of the Lord is not misled by the material bodies of the Brahman and the dog, but he is attracted by the spiritual spark within the respective entities. Those who imitate an Uttamadhikari in terms of the sense of oneness or fellowship, but who behave in terms of bodily relationship are false philanthropists. Therefore, the concept of universal brotherhood must be learned from the Uttamadhikari, devotee of the Lord, not from such a foolish person who has no proper vision of the individual soul and of supersoul, the plenary expansion of the Supreme Lord, which dwells everywhere. In this mantra of Sri Isopanisad, it is clearly mentioned that one should absorb or see. This means one must follow the previous acharyas, the perfected teachers. Anupasyati is the exact Sanskrit word used in this connection. Anu means by following, and Pasyati means to absorb. One should not try to see things as he does with naked eye. The naked eye cannot see anything properly due to its material defectiveness. One cannot see properly unless one has heard from a superior source, and the highest source is the Vedic wisdom spoken by the Lord Himself. This truth is coming in disciplic succession from the Lord to Brahma, from Brahma to Narad, from Narad to Vyas, and from Vyas to many of his disciples. Formerly, there was no necessity of recording the message of the Vedas because people of earlier ages were more intelligent and had sharper memories. They could follow instructions simply by hearing once from the mouth of a bona fide spiritual master. At present, there are many commentaries on the revealed scriptures, but most of them are not in the line of Srila Vyasadeva, who originally taught the Vedic wisdom. The final, most perfect and sublime work of Srila Vyasadeva is the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the correct commentary on the Hridayanta Sutra. Similarly, there is the Bhagavad Gita, which is spoken by the Lord Himself, which was recorded by Vyasadeva. These are the most important of the many revealed scriptures, and any commentary which does not conform to the principle of Gita or the Srimad Bhagavatam is unauthorized. There is a complete symmetrical agreement between the Upanishad, Vedanta. There is a complete symmetrical agreement between the Upanishads, Vedanta, the Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Srimad Bhagavatam. Therefore, no one should try to reach any conclusion about the Vedas without being instructed by members of the line of Vyasadeva, or at least those who believe in the personality of Godhead and his diverse energies. Only one who is already in the liberated status, according to the Bhagavad Gita, can become an Uttamadhikari devotee and can see everyone or every living being as his own brother. This cannot be seen by politicians who are always after some material gain. Imitation of this liberated status is to serve the outward body for name, for fame, or for some such reward, but is not service to the spirit soul. Such imitators have no information of the spiritual world. The Uttam Adhikari see the spirit soul of eternity and serves him as a spirit, which includes matter automatically. Mantra 7. यस्मिन् सर्वाणि भूतानि आत्मवद् विजन्तः तत्र को मोहः कः शोकः एकत्वम् अनुपश्यतः. Translation: one who always see all living entities as spiritual spark in quality one with the Lord becomes a true knower of a thing. What is there as illusion or anxiety for him? Purport by His Divine Grace, except for the two more advanced devotees described above, no one can correctly see the spiritual position of a living being. The living entities are qualitatively one with the Supreme Lord, and the sparks of the fire are qualitatively one with the nature of the fire. But sparks are not fire as far as quantity is concerned. The quantity of heat and light presented in the fire is not equal to the quantity of heat and light in the spark. The Mahabhagavat, the great devotee, see oneness in the sense that everything is the energy of the Supreme Lord, and as there is no difference between the energy and the energetic, there is a sense of oneness. Without heat and light, there is no meaning of fire, and yet heat and light from the analytical point of view are different from fire. But in synthesis, heat, light, and fire are all the same one thing. The Sanskrit word found here, Ektvam Anupasyita, mean to see the unity of the living entities from the viewpoint of the revealed scriptures. Every individual spark of the Supreme Whole has almost 80% of the known qualities of the whole. but they are not as good as the Supreme Lord. These qualities are present in minute quantity as the living entities, but a minute part and parcel of the Supreme Whole. This is like the drop of water and the ocean. The quantity of salt present in the drop is never comparable to the quantity of the salt present in the complete ocean. But the quality of the salt present in the drop is unequal in quality in chemical composition with that present in the ocean. If the individual living being were equal both in quality and in quantity, then there would be no question of the living entity being submerged by the influence of material energy. It has already been discussed in previous mantras that no living being, even the powerful demigods, can surpass the Supreme Being in any respect. Therefore, Iktvam does not mean that a living being is equal in all respect to the Supreme Lord. It means, in broader sense, that there is a one interest, just as in family, the interest of all members is one. In a nation, although different individual citizens are there, the national interest is one. Therefore, the living entities being part and parcel of the same supreme family, the interest of the supreme being and that of the part and parcel is not different. Every living being is the son of the supreme being, as it is said in the Bhagavad Gita. All the living creatures, including birds, reptiles, ants, aquatics, trees, and so on, all over the universe, all are emanation from the marginal potency of the Supreme Lord, and therefore all of them belong to the same family of the Supreme Being. There is no clash of interest in spiritual life. The spiritual entities are meant for enjoyment. By nature, by constitution, every living being, both the Supreme Lord and each different part and parcel, is meant for enjoyment eternally. The living beings who are engaged in the material tabernacle are also seeking enjoyment always, but they are seeking their enjoyment on a platform which is not made for them. Aside from this material world, there is in the spiritual platform where the Supreme Being is enjoying with his innumerable associates without any trace of material qualities. That platform is called Nirogana. On the Nirogana platform, there is no clash of enjoyment. Here in the material world, there is always a clash between different individual beings because here the center of enjoyment is missed. The center of enjoyment is the Supreme Lord, Krishna, who is the center of the sublime and spiritual rasa dance. We are all meant for joining him and for enjoying life with one transcendental interest and without any clash. That is the highest, or we can say the high platform of spiritual interest. And as soon as such perfect form of a oneness is realized, there can be no question of illusion or lamentation. Maya or illusion means a godless civilization, the result of which is lamentation. The godless civilization sponsored by the modern politician is always full of anxieties. That is the law of nature. No one can surpass this law as is stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Only those who surrender at the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord can overcome the stringent law of nature. If therefore we wish to get rid of all sort of illusions and anxiety and create unity of all diverse interest, we must bring God into all our activities. The results of our all activities must be used to serve the interest of the Lord, not for any other purpose, because only by serving the interest of the Lord can we feel the Atma Bhuta interest mentioned here in Isopanisad. This and the Brahma Bhuta interest mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita are one and the same thing. The Supreme Atma or soul is the Lord Himself, and the minute Atman is the living entity. The Supreme Atma or Paramatma alone maintain all the individual minute beings because the Supreme Lord wants to derive pleasure out of their affection. The Father extends Himself by His children and maintains them in order to drive pleasure. If the children of the father are obedient to his will, family affair will run smoothly with one interest and as a pleasing atmosphere. Exactly the same thing is transcendently arranged in the Brahman, or absolute family of the Param Brahman, the Supreme Spirit. The Param Brahman is as much as person as the individual entities are. None of them are impersonal. Such transcendental personalities are full of transcendental bliss, knowledge, and life eternal. That is the real position of spiritual existence. And as soon as one is fully cognizant of this transcendental position, he at once surrenders unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Being, Sri Krishna. But such Mahatmas, great souls, are very rarely seen because such transcendental realization is achieved only after many, many births. Once attained, however, there is no more illusion or distress, no more of the misery of the material existence, and there is no birth and death as we experience in the present status of our life. That is the information we get from this mantra of Sri Isopanisad. Mantra 8. Saparyak chakuram akyayam avarnamam asnavarivam suddham apapa vidham kaviramaneshi prabhi samayambhur यथाथितो रथन्वयादचस्वतेभ्यो समभवायो. Translation. Such a person must know, in fact, the greatest of all, who is unavoided, omniscient, beyond reproach, without veins, pure and uncontaminated, the self sufficient philosopher who is avoiding everyone's desire since time immemorial, purported by his divine grace. Here is the description of the transcendental and eternal form of the absolute personality of Godhead. The Supreme Lord is not formless. He has his own transcendental form, which is not at all similar to those of the mundane world. The living entities in this world have their form embodied by the material nature, and they work like any material machines. The psychological and anatomical structure of the body of a living being must have a mechanical construction with veins and so forth in the embodiment. But in the transcendental body of the Lord, there is nothing like veins. It is clearly stated here that he is unembodied. That means there is no difference between his body and soul, nor does he accept a body by the law of nature as we do. In the material concept of bodily life, the soul is different from the gross embodiment and subtle mind. The Supreme Lord is apart from any such compartmentalized arrangement. However, there is nothing like a difference of body and mind in the Supreme Lord. He is the complete whole, and his mind and body and he himself are all one and the same. In the Brahma Samhita, there is a similar description of the body of the Supreme Lord. He is described there as Satchidananda Vigraha. This means that he is the eternal form, fully representing transcendental existence, knowledge, and bliss. The Vedic literature states clearly that he has a completely different kind of transcendental body, and thus he is sometimes described as formless. This formless means that he has no form like ours, or that he is devoid of a form which we can perceive. In the Brahma Samhita, it is further said that the Lord can do anything and everything with any of the parts of his body. It is said there that with each and every one of the part of his body, such as the hand, he can do the work of other senses. This means that the Lord can walk with his hands, he can accept a thing by his legs, he can see by his hands and feet, and he can eat by his eyes. In the Shruti mantras, it is said that he has no hands and no legs like us. but that he has a different type of hand and legs by which he can accept all that we offer him and walk faster than anyone anywhere. These things are confirmed in this mantra of Sri Ishwarya by the use of the word like omnipotent. The Lord Sri Vigraha, his worshipable form, which is installed in the temples by Acharya, who have realized the Lord in terms of mantra 7, is also non different from the original form of the Lord. The original form of the Lord is that of Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna expands himself by an unlimited number of forms like Baldev, Rama, Narsim, Vara, etc. And all of these are one and the same personality of Godhead. Similarly, the Archa Vigraha, which is worshipped in the temples, is also expanded form of the Lord. By worshipping the Archa Vigraha of the Lord, one can at once approach the Lord, who accepts the service of the devotee by his omnipotent energy without any reproach. The Vigraha of the Lord descends by the request of the Acharyas, the holy teachers, and work exactly in the original way by his omnipotent energy. Foolish people who have no knowledge of these mantras of the Sri Yushapriyad or of any of the Shruti mantras consider that the Sri Vigraha, who is worshipped by the pure devotees, is made up of material elements. The imperfect eyes of the foolish people or to the Kanishta Adhikari, this form is considered material. But such people with little knowledge do not know that the Lord, being omnipotent and omniscient, can transform matter into spirit and spirit into matter as he desires. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord regrets the fallen condition of the man with little knowledge, who regards the body of the Lord as material because he descends like a man into this world. Such poorly informed person do not know the omnipotency of the Lord. To the mental speculator, therefore, the Lord does not manifest himself in fullness. He can be appreciated only in proportion to one's surrender to him. And the fallen conditions of the living entities are due entirely to forgetfulness of our relationship with God. In this mantra, as well as in many others in the Vedas, it is clearly mentioned from time immemorial the Lord is supplying. The living being first of all desire, and the Lord supplies the object of desire in proportion to the degree of qualification. If a man wants to be a high court judge, he must not only have acquired the necessary qualification, but he must also depend upon the disposition of the authority concerned, who can award the title of high court judge. Simply, simple acquisition of the qualification of high court judge is not sufficient in order to occupy the post. This must be awarded by some superior authority. Similarly, the Lord awards enjoyment to the living being in proportion to his qualification. In other words, by the law of karma, those qualifications, however, are not sufficient without the mercy of the Lord. Ordinary, Ordinarily, the living being does not know what to ask for from the Lord or what post to qualify himself for. When the living being knows his constitutional position, however, he asks to be accepted into the transcendental association of the Lord in order to render transcendental loving service unto him. Instead of asking for this, the living being, under the influence of material nature, asks for many other things, and his mentality is described in the Bhagavad Gita as divided or split intelligence. Spiritual intelligence is one, but the opposite number is of many varieties. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said that the person who are captivated by the temporary beauties of the external energy for forget their real aim of life, which is to go back to Godhead, because Forgetting this, one tries to adjust things by various plans and programs, which are compared with the process of chewing already chewed refuse. But the Lord is so kind that He allows the forgetful living being to do so without interfering in his activities. If a living being wants to go to hell, the Lord allow him to do so without interference. And if he wants to go home back to Godhead, the Lord also helps him to do that. God is described as Paribuhu, the greatest of all. No one is greater than or equal to him. Other living beings are described here as beggar, who ask from the Lord and the Lord supplies their desirables. If other entities were equal to the Lord in potency, or if they were omnipotent or omniscient, there would be no question of begging from the Lord even for the so called liberation. The real liberation of the living being is to